History is written by the victors, filled with the stories of emperors, shoguns, and great generals. But sometimes, the most pivotal moments, the events that change the course of a nation, turn on the actions of a person whose name is barely whispered a ghost in the official record. This is the story of one such woman, an emperor's secret weapon, who risked everything to become his perfect decoy. Welcome to 14th century Japan, a nation on a knife's edge. For over a century, real power had not been with the emperor in Kyoto, but with the military government, the Kamakura Shogunate. The emperor was a divine figurehead, a prisoner in a gilded cage. But one man dared to challenge this reality. His name was Emperor Go-Daigo. Go-Daigo was no mere puppet. He dreamed of an impossible revolution, to overthrow the shogunate and restore direct imperial rule. It was a dream that bordered on treason, a gamble that could cost him his throne and his life. To succeed, he needed absolute loyalty, unwavering secrecy, and allies who would follow him into the fire. He found all three in the most unlikely of places, his most trusted court lady. Her name, as history records it, was Kōtō Naishi. This wasn't a personal name, but a title, one held by the emperor's most senior and trusted female attendant. She was from a mid-ranking noble family, educated and refined, but her true power came from one source, the emperor's complete and utter trust. She was more than his favorite, she was his confidant, his partner in a dangerous political game. She saw his ambition, she understood his plans, and she shared his revolutionary fire. Go-Daigo's first attempts to seize power had ended in failure. His plans were leaked, his allies discovered. In 1331, his final, most audacious plot, the Genk War, was exposed by a traitor from within his own inner circle. The shogunate, now fully aware of his treason, was coming for him. The emperor was trapped. Shogunate soldiers were on their way to storm the palace and arrest him. His dream was about to end in disgrace and exile. In this moment of absolute crisis, with everything on the line, he had one final, desperate card to play. It was a plan so daring, so reliant on deception, that its success would depend entirely on the courage and nerve of one person. He turned to the woman who had never left his side. As the enemy closed in, the emperor's survival no longer depended on an army or a fortress. It depended on an illusion. He needed someone to become him, to wear his robes, ride in his carriage, and draw the entire enemy force away on a false trail. It was a suicide mission, and the person he chose to be his decoy was Kōtō Naishi. The night of August 24, 1331, this was the endgame. Outside the palace walls, the shogunate's army was mobilizing, ready to seize the emperor. Inside, a desperate escape plan was set in motion. The strategy was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. Misdirection. The army was hunting one man, the emperor. To save him, they had to give the hunters a ghost to chase. The plan hinged on an audacious act of theater. Two imperial processions would leave the palace. One would be a grand, conspicuous decoy, designed to be seen and followed. The other would be a small, secret escape. Kōtō Naishi was to be the star of the main performance. She would not just play the part of the emperor, she would become him. Think of the courage this required. She was not merely putting on a costume, she was wrapping herself in treason. By wearing the emperor's clothes, she was committing an act that, if discovered, would mean instant death. This was not just loyalty, it was a shared gamble for the fate of the nation. Her motivation went far beyond simple duty. It was born from a profound belief in Go-Daigo's vision, and a deep, personal devotion to the man himself. She was a full partner in his revolution, and this was her moment to lead the charge. The decoy procession began. The grand palanquin, carrying the woman disguised as the emperor, moved brazenly out of the palace, heading towards the sacred Mount Hai. It was a deliberate, public move, calculated to be seen by the shogunate's spies. The bait was laid. The enemy, seeing the emperor apparently fleeing to a predictable stronghold, took it. The main body of the shogunate's forces immediately gave chase, their attention fixed entirely on the ghost. And as the shogunate's army thundered towards Mount Hai, a small, unassuming carriage slipped out of a side gate, melting into the darkness. Inside was the real Emperor Go-Daigo, disguised in the robes of a court lady, his face hidden, his destination not the mountains, but the ancient capital of Nara. The switch was complete. This was the heart of the gambit. Every moment Kōtō no Naishi kept the deception going. Every road she traveled, every soldier she drew towards her, was another moment of freedom for the real emperor. She was a shield, a lightning rod, absorbing all the danger so that he could escape. It was an act of incredible nerve, a high-stakes performance played out on the stage of history, with life and death as the only possible outcomes. The decoy had worked perfectly, the emperor was free, and the rebellion was still alive. But what about the decoy herself? Kōtō no Naishi had led the enemy on a wild goose chase, but that chase would inevitably end. The soldiers would surround her palanquin, they would pull back the curtain, and they would discover the truth. What happens to a woman who dares to impersonate a god? The chase was over. On a mountain path, the shogunate's army finally cornered their prize, but when they ripped back the curtain of the imperial carriage, they found not the son of heaven, but a woman. The deception was revealed. The initial shock of the soldiers likely gave way to a cold fury. They had been utterly humiliated, led on a fool's errand while their true target slipped through their fingers. What happened to Kōtō no Naishi in that moment? History, frustratingly, does not record the details. Whether she was captured, interrogated, or managed to escape in the ensuing chaos is lost to time. But her mission was a resounding success. The time she bought was priceless. It allowed Emperor Go-Daigo to escape, regroup, and launch the next phase of his rebellion. Her act of courage was the critical spark that kept the revolution alive. And for a brief, glorious moment, it seemed her sacrifice had paid off. Go-Daigo, after being temporarily exiled, returned with an army at his back. In 1333, he achieved the impossible. He overthrew the Kamakura Shogunate and began his Kenmu restoration, restoring direct power to the imperial throne for the first time in over a century. Kōtō no Naishi returned to his side in the capital, a celebrated heroine and a key figure in his new government. It was the dawn of a new age. But the dawn was false. Go-Daigo's new regime was unstable. He had underestimated the ambition of the very samurai who had helped him win. A powerful warlord named Ashikaga Takauji, once the emperor's greatest general, turned against him. The dream of imperial rule crumbled into dust. Just a few years after his triumph, Go-Daigo was forced to flee his own capital, betrayed by the man who had put him on the throne. He established a new, rival court in the remote mountains of Yoshino, beginning a period of 60 years of civil war known as the Nanbokuchi, the era of the northern and southern courts. And Kōtō no Naishi, ever loyal, went with him. She traded the palaces of Kyoto for a life of hardship and exile in the wilderness. It was during this difficult time in Yoshino that she gave the emperor his most important legacy. She is believed to have been the mother of his son, Prince Kanyoshi. By bearing a royal heir, she did more than just prove her devotion. She secured the future of Go-Daigo's lineage. This son would grow up to become a great general, leading the southern court's fight for legitimacy in the south of Japan. Kōtō no Naishi had been a decoy, a courtier, and the mother of a prince. She had stood by her emperor through triumph and disaster, but in 1339, in the isolation of their mountain court, Go-Daigo died, his dream of a unified Japan under his rule unrealized. For the woman who had tied her entire existence to his, what happens when the center of your universe disappears? With the death of her emperor, Kōtō no Naishi vanishes from the official record. Her story ends as it began, in the shadows. After dedicating her life to Go-Daigo's cause, she is said to have become a Buddhist nun, devoting her remaining years to praying for his soul. Where and when she died is unknown. She simply disappears, a ghost walking out of the pages of history. But her story did not disappear. It was saved from obscurity by one of the great masterpieces of Japanese literature, the Taihaki, or Chronicle of Great Peace. This epic war tale, compiled in the late 14th century, is Japan's answer to the Iliad or the Song of Roland. It's a sprawling, dramatic account of the war between the courts, filled with heroes, villains, tragedy, and betrayal, and in its pages, Kōtō no Naishi is not a footnote, she is a star. This is where the line between history and legend becomes beautifully blurred. The Taihaki is not a dry historical text, it's literature. It takes the known facts and breathes life into them with dialogue, emotion, and dramatic flair. The core fact of her story that she acted as the emperor's decoy is supported by other, more reliable sources. It really happened. But the thrilling details, the whispered conversations with the emperor, the sheer drama of the escape, these are the work of the storytellers. The Taihaki gave us the character of Kōtō no Naishi. It cemented her image in the national consciousness as the ultimate loyalist, the brilliant and beautiful woman who saved her emperor. Her story became a celebrated tale of loyalty and love, a demonstration of the samurai-era ideal of self-sacrifice for one's lord. She was held up as a model of female virtue and courage. But what is her true legacy? It is no exaggeration to say that her single act of bravery changed Japanese history. Without her, Go-Daigo would have been captured in 1331. The Kenmu restoration would have been a forgotten footnote. The Southern Court would never have been established, and the political landscape of the 14th century would be unrecognizable. Her courage didn't just save a man, it preserved a cause and created a new chapter in the nation's history. Kōtō no Naishi was a woman who lived in the shadows of power, but whose actions cast a long and undeniable light. She reminds us that history is not just made by men on battlefields, but by the quiet, calculated courage of those who operate behind the scenes. She was the emperor's decoy, a ghost who tipped the scales of fate, proving that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one you never see.